When you consider 3 generations, it's very illuminating and helps you avoid all the chaos, confusion, and rage. Everyone wants to wave smoke and mirrors in front of you, get you to juggle razor blades, and, shock and awe you. This is why it makes sense to think ahead a century. Everyone will always try to make you feel anxious. They will essentially fudge you at all times. "Oh, this is not safe. That is not safe," they will say. They want to take your Bitcoin, isn't that right? In other words, you have the most wanted item in the universe, you keep it hidden, and after 100 years, your family becomes wealthy. Michael Saylor is a Bitcoin maximalist, as we all know, but what he discusses in today's video is applicable to all cryptocurrencies. Due to the fact that XRP, like Bitcoin, is limited, you guys should pay attention. Additionally, the price of XRP will skyrocket after enough individuals have amassed enough of it, making it actually very difficult to obtain substantial amounts of XRP in the future. That's exactly why I made today's video and included some quotes from Michael Saylor, because what he's saying about Bitcoin also applies to XRP. And yes, I do believe that will be the case at some point during our time here. Additionally, I believe that this is a once-in-a-lifetime chance. Having saying that, please hit the like button so that the entire XRP army may view this video. Let's get started. A decade ago, the price of an acre of real estate in Miami Beach was roughly $10,000. It will now be around $20 million. Thus, that accounts for the price increase of 2,000. That is in opposition to a set standard. Calculations show that the US dollar has been inflated and has been supplying 7% annually for a century. The strong currency is the weak current. In other words, the global reserve currency is growing by 7%. Thus, over a century, the asset inflation rate in dollars is 7% annually. You go from $10,000 per acre to $10 million per acre in this way. Unless they are seriously mismanaged, weak currencies in the developing countries are currently inflating at a rate of 14% annually. I'll give you a basic fact, though. Suppose you have $1 million at the beginning, and you keep it in dollars that are inflated and provided at a rate of 7% annually. Your $1 million is worth roughly $700 after a century. However, if you're keeping it in 14% depreciating currencies, how much do you believe it's worth? 28 cents. Alright, so it's obvious that weak currencies don't endure for 100 years, because people are aware that it is not a wise investment to convert $1 million to 28 cents. However, the strong currency is causing it to drop from $1 million to $700. And that is the pace at which the United States has won every war over the past century. The topic of what will happen to all these currencies in these countries in the next 100 years, the euro against the yuan versus the dollar, doesn't seem to be that important in my opinion. What matters in my opinion is whether you just have 2 options or whether we have 3. You are either losing 7% annually, or you have your money in the world's strongest currency. Every 10 years, you're being sliced in half. If you invest in the weak currency, you will be cut in half every 3 or 4 years, going from $1 million to 28 cents. Or you will be cut in half 10 times in 100 years, going from $1 million to $700. Alternatively, you invest in a diverse portfolio of conventional assets, including conventional real estate. Investing in real estate investment trusts REITs, securitized real estate, S&P businesses, or large corporations is likely to yield nominal growth rates of 7 or 8%. In actual terms, the money will lose 7 or 8% of its value. As well as in a century. In 100 years, the $1 million you have now will be worth $1 million. You won't have lost all of your money. You just won't have accomplished anything. Therefore, you must remove the risk and obligation from the asset class if you truly wish to surpass that 7% hurdle rate. You run the risk of having your stuff taken. It could be struck by an earthquake. A flood is the danger. Rain is a risk. There is a chance that the bank's executive will embezzle the funds. The risk is that the tenant will either fail to pay their rent or set your building on fire. You run the risk of having your property controlled by the mayor. Such and such corporation is the risk. BlackBerry can't compete with Google, Nokia can't compete with Apple, and they can't compete with AI, or they'll be unionized. I could list 100 risks, But the main reason traditional assets such as stocks and real estate are unable to outperform Bitcoin is because they are unable to escape the risk and liability of having people running physical properties in the real world, where governments act and lightning strikes occur. Thus, Bitcoin is, in my view, the theoretical long-term monetary inflation rate over a century is roughly 14% as opposed to 7%. This is the same reason I believe that cryptocurrencies like XRP and HBAR are better solutions than Bitcoin since they have more functionality, better technology, and more overall utility. Bitcoin is now Michael Saylor's ride or die. He will never stop talking about it. He always promotes that since, of course, he purchases Bitcoin through MicroStrategy. That is the main idea of his entire model. However, I want you all to pause and ponder. You see, Bitcoin is a fantastic digital currency, and it was amazing for the first widely accepted cryptocurrency. However, if you have something that is superior in every way, for example, it has better Layer 2 apps, better decentralized technology, better development, faster transactions, and cheaper transaction costs, it's simply better cryptocurrency overall. Instead, why don't you park your money there? And the solution is rather straightforward in my opinion. It's a fairly obvious choice, really. Now, this is not to imply that I don't believe anyone should ever own Bitcoin. I do buy Bitcoin. Since I know that XRP and HBR are fundamentally superior, I give them first priority even if I have been dollar cost averaging into them for a quite long time. In essence, Michael Saylor is stating that Bitcoin is expected to experience rapid growth as both developed and developing countries would accept it more broadly due to their desire for better currency options. When you invest in real estate equities, you're essentially simply keeping up with inflation so they don't cut it. What is the other option then? Indeed, it goes without saying that cryptocurrency will be used by all of these individuals. However, you also need to consider the numbers. Since 2013, Bitcoin's influence has been gradually waning. Following that, other cryptocurrencies like XRP and HBAR have been steadily gaining ground. Why is that then? What causes Bitcoin's market dominance to decline while that of other cryptocurrencies increases? The answer is actually rather straightforward. Now, there is competition. There are more superior cryptocurrencies on the market. You want to determine who has the best functionality and identify the obvious winner. And I believe you ought to pick that one. That is merely my personal view. Although it isn't financial advice, this is basically my argument. Additionally, Bitcoin may increase fivefold. The value of those cryptocurrencies could increase 100 times or more, as demonstrated by the recent price behavior of XRP versus Bitcoin in November. And yes, I do think that XRP will prepare to catch up once more. Having said that, Michael Saylor does have a few more significant points to make. Keep in mind what I said, and let's get started. The difference between 14% and 7% is what will make your $1 million turn into $1 billion. Your $1 million purchasing power increases to $1 billion at 14%. Correct. Your $1 million remain $1 million at 7%. Correct. Do you want to double 10 times in a row, you know? That's 14 against 7. Or would you like to? Essentially break even 10 consecutive times per 10 years. In the end, you know, you can get excited about hypergrowth Bitcoin in the short term. That is 40 to 50% of Bitcoin. And over the course of the next 10 or